Imagine being a teenager and telling your parents you're hearing voices from God. Now imagine those voices are telling you to lead an army and save your country. Sounds like the plot of a fantasy novel, right? But for one extraordinary French teenager in the 1400s, this wasn't fiction. It was her reality. She couldn't read or write. She had never ridden a horse in battle. She had zero military training. Yet within 1 year, this teenage girl would command the French army, turn the tide of a century-long war, and be burned at the stake before her 20th birthday. The story of Joan of Arc isn't just ancient history. It's a tale of courage, faith, and determination that continues to captivate the world nearly 600 years later. Tonight, we explore how a peasant girl became a national hero, a Catholic saint, and one of history's most unforgettable rebels. In 1412, in this small village of Domremy, a baby girl was born to simple farmers. They named her Joan, or as the French would say, Jeanne. There was nothing remarkable about her early life. She never learned to read or write. She helped her parents with chores, and she was known for being deeply religious. What makes Joan's story so extraordinary is just how ordinary she was. She wasn't from a noble family. She had no connections to power. In the 1400s, women, especially peasant women, had virtually no social standing. The fact that she accomplished anything beyond marrying and having children was already breaking every rule of her time. But at age 13, something happened that would change the course of her life and the history of France. Joan began hearing voices, which she believed were saints speaking to her. These voices told her something seemingly impossible, that she, a teenage girl, was meant to save France from English occupation. We have to understand the context. The 100 Years' War had been raging for almost a century. England controlled much of France. The French king had no crown, no power, and the country was in chaos. When Joan said she heard voices telling her to save France, she wasn't just talking about a battle. She was talking about saving an entire nation that had nearly ceased to exist. By the time Joan was 16, the voices became more specific. They told her to go to the uncrowned French king, Charles VII, convince him to give her an army, and then lead that army to lift the English siege of Orléans. For a teenage girl in medieval France, this would be like a high school student today walking into the Pentagon and asking to command troops in battle. After traveling 11 days through enemy territory, disguised as a man for her safety, Joan arrived here at the castle of Chinon in 1429. Somehow, this 17-year-old farm girl convinced the guards to let her see Charles VII, the uncrowned king of France. The court was skeptical, of course. They thought she was crazy or perhaps a spy. They tested her in various ways. According to legend, Charles hid among his courtiers to see if she could identify him, which she did immediately. She also reportedly told him things that only he and God knew, which convinced him to take her seriously. Despite having no military experience, Joan was given armor, a horse, and a small army. Her first mission? Lift the English siege of Orléans, a city that had been under attack for months and was on the verge of surrender. What happened next defies all military logic. Joan arrived at Orléans on April 29, 1429. By May 8th, just 9 days later, the English had retreated and the siege was lifted. Professional soldiers and commanders had failed for months, yet this teenage girl succeeded in just over a week. Victory at Orléans was just the beginning. Joan led the French army to a series of stunning victories, clearing the path for Charles VII to travel to Reims Cathedral for his coronation, just as her voices had instructed. Here in Orléans, we still celebrate Joan every year. For us, she is not just a historical figure, she is our hero, our savior. Without her, there might not be a France as we know it today. Despite her incredible success, Joan's story took a dark turn. In May 1430, she was captured by Burgundian troops, French allies of the English. Instead of ransoming her back, Charles VII, the king she had helped crown, abandoned her. The English paid the ransom instead, eager to put her on trial. The trial was a sham from the beginning. The English needed to discredit Joan to prove she wasn't divinely inspired. The easiest way to do that was to convict her of heresy, claiming she was guided by demons, not saints. Remarkably, the transcripts of Joan's trial still exist. They reveal a young woman of extraordinary intelligence and courage, despite having no formal education or legal training. For months, she faced daily interrogation by some of the most educated men in Europe. What's most impressive in the transcripts is how she outsmarted her interrogators. When asked if she was in God's grace, a theological trap, because Catholic doctrine said no one could be certain of this, she replied, "If I am not, may God put me there. And if I am, may God keep me there." Even the judges were impressed by this answer. After months of psychological torture, isolation, and threats of physical torture, Joan finally broke. She signed a confession saying her voices were not divine. But within days, she recanted, saying she had only confessed out of fear. On May 30th, 1431, Joan of Arc was brought to this marketplace in Rouen. She was just 19 years old. The charge, relapsed heretic. The sentence, death by burning at the stake. Eyewitness accounts of her execution are heartbreaking. She asked for a cross to be held before her as she died. Witnesses reported that even English soldiers wept, with one saying, "We are lost. We have burned a saint." Joan's execution was meant to be the end of her story, a discredited heretic, forgotten by history. Instead, it became the most powerful part of her legend. 25 years after her death, a new trial cleared her name. In 1920, she was declared a saint by the Catholic Church. Today, she remains a symbol of courage, faith, and determination for people around the world. It's crazy to think she was very young when she led armies. Nowadays, teenagers can barely get through their homework, and she was out here changing history. It makes you think about what young people can really do when they believe in something. Joan of Arc's story continues to resonate because it defies our expectations. A teenage girl who could neither read nor write outsmarted political and religious leaders. A peasant with no military training defeated professional English soldiers. And a young woman in an age of extreme gender limitations commanded respect from hardened warriors. Her short life, just 19 years, changed the course of history. France eventually won the 100 Years' War. French identity and independence, which seemed almost lost, were restored. And a teenage girl from a small village became one of history's most enduring symbols of courage against impossible odds.